When 28-year-old Jennifer Rothwell disappeared on a snowy November morning, it looked like a routine missing person case. She left home for work, but never arrived. By that evening, her car was found abandoned less than a mile from home. Her husband, 28-year-old Beau Rothwell, did what any worried spouse would do. He called the police, he posted online, he joined the search for her. But as detectives retraced her final hours, there were uncovered tensions inside the marriage that few people knew about, and a trail of evidence Beau never expected them to find. What begins as a search for a missing woman is about to take a deeply disturbing turn. It all starts on November 12, 2019, around 9:44 p.m. Rothwell told the dispatcher that his wife had left for work that morning around 6:20 a.m. because of bad weather predictions. Her co-workers had contacted him later in the day. Jennifer never showed up at the office. She had not called in, she was not answering her phone, and that just wasn't like her. To the dispatcher, Beau sounded composed, rational, and worried. He provided details methodically. He told them what time she had left, what she was wearing, and when he had last heard from her. Officers were dispatched immediately. When Creve police arrived at the Rothwell home, Beau met them at the door. He appeared cooperative, explaining that this was completely out of character for Jennifer. She was responsible, reliable, and always in communication. Something had to be wrong. Earlier that evening, Jennifer's silver 2011 Hyundai had been found abandoned less than a mile from their home. Police had noticed it around 9:30 a.m. but merely tagged it as an abandoned vehicle. The car was in perfect condition with no signs of struggle. Her purse was missing, but her phone was inside. Officers asked if they could look around. Beau allowed them a cursory walkthrough. Everything appeared normal. To the responding officers, it looked like a straightforward missing person case. But then something shifted. When officers asked to search Beau's phone, he refused. When they asked to examine his truck and her car, he declined. When they requested a voluntary DNA sample, he said no. And then he asked for an attorney. For officers who regularly deal with frantic relatives, this was unusual. Most spouses would hand over anything, desperate for any lead. The combination of an abandoned car, a missing pregnant woman, and a husband who immediately shut down all access raised immediate concerns. But publicly, Beau played a different role. The next day, he posted on Facebook. He wrote, "Some of you may have heard already, but my wife Jennifer went missing last night. I've filed a police report and the search is ongoing. Please, if you hear of anything or have any information, it would be greatly appreciated." He joined search efforts, distributed flyers, and gave every appearance of a desperate husband. Privately, though, investigators were already asking different questions. They wanted to know who Jennifer Rothwell was, and more importantly, they wanted to know who the man claiming to be her worried husband really was. Jennifer Rothwell was a process engineer at DuPont's Chesterfield office in St. Louis. Born November 20, 1990 in Overland Park, Kansas, friends and coworkers described her as organized, kind, driven, and deeply reliable. When Jennifer failed to show up for work on November 12th, her DuPont coworkers immediately knew something was wrong. They got in their cars and drove through the area looking for her. At 8 p.m., they contacted Beau to tell him they found her car abandoned. Jennifer and Beau had met as lab partners at the University of Missouri, Columbia in 2010. Both were engineering majors. They bonded over vacations with her family and a mutual love of Game of Thrones. They graduated in 2013, got engaged in 2014, and married on September 26, 2015. By 2018, they were both thriving professionally. Jennifer was up for a promotion. In April 2019, they bought a new house with a good-sized backyard. They were ready to start their family. But starting that family had not been easy. In December 2018, Jennifer was diagnosed with endometriosis, a painful condition that can make pregnancy extremely difficult. Jennifer leaned in harder. She tracked her ovulation cycles meticulously, scheduled their intimate life around fertility windows, and managed doctor's appointments and treatments. Over time, their relationship became clinical and regimented, but Jennifer pushed forward. Month after month, the pregnancy tests came back negative. And then, on October 26, 2019, it finally happened. Jennifer found out she was pregnant. Friends who saw them at a charity function in October thought all was well. To the outside world, this should have been the happiest moment of their lives. But as investigators would soon discover, something had been terribly wrong inside the Rothwell home, and the first clue would come from an unlikely source. It would come from Beau's own trash. On Wednesday, November 13th, the same day Beau was posting on Facebook asking for help, he made a critical mistake. He put his trash out for collection. Police do not need a search warrant to look through garbage once it has been placed in a public area. When investigators went through those trash bags, they found rubber gloves, used paper towels, and a receipt from Deerberg's grocery store dated November 11th. The receipt showed purchases of bleach, carpet cleaner, and paper towels. Police pulled surveillance footage. The video showed Beau shopping during a significant snow event on the evening of November 11th. This was the same evening he claimed he and Jennifer had been home together watching cooking shows. Armed with this evidence, detectives obtained a search warrant. That evening, just 5 hours after Beau's Facebook plea, they returned. This time, they were not asking permission. The moment investigators entered, they were hit with an overwhelming smell. It was the smell of bleach. The main floor appeared unremarkable, but when they descended into the basement, they found what Beau had been desperately trying to hide. At the bottom of the stairs, crime scene technicians noticed a large, discolored area of carpet that was still damp with cleaning products. The nearby drywall showed visible damage, scuffs, and impact marks. In the carpet fibers, they found strands of human hair. Under forensic light and chemical tests, the discolored carpet lit up. It was blood. There was a significant amount of it. Then investigators noticed a small basement window that was wide open, letting frigid November air pour in. There was no logical reason to have a window open in 17-degree snowy weather, unless someone needed to ventilate the overpowering chemical smell. In the garage, Beau's 2015 GMC Canyon pickup truck had that same sharp odor inside. Days later, lab results confirmed the blood was human. DNA analysis matched it to Jennifer using her parents' genetic profiles. The detectives had found their crime scene, but they still hadn't found Jennifer. And they didn't have answers about what had driven Beau to this point. Those answers would come from his digital life. While crime scene technicians processed the basement, another team was digging into the digital lives of Jennifer and Beau Rothwell. What they found painted two very different pictures of the same marriage. Jennifer's phone told a heartbreaking story. In the days before she disappeared, her browser history showed searches like, "What to do if your husband is upset you are pregnant," "Husband doesn't care," and 7 secrets your husband doesn't want to tell you about your pregnancy. Here was a woman who had fought through endometriosis and finally achieved the pregnancy she had been working toward. And her response was not joy, it was fear about her husband's reaction. But why would Beau be upset? They had been trying to have a baby. The answer was in Beau's phone. Working backward through Beau's communications, investigators discovered that while Jennifer had been fighting to build their family, Beau had been having a double life. By May or early June 2019, Beau had started an affair. Text messages showed an ongoing relationship filled with declarations of love and discussions about what he should do about his marriage. On October 27th, just one day after Jennifer told him she was pregnant, Beau messaged his mistress and attempted to end their relationship. He told her that he had been thinking about divorcing Jennifer for months. He said he thought he would have had the courage to go through a divorce by now. But 2 days later, Beau resumed messaging her. When the mistress said she missed him, Beau revealed why he had tried to end things. His wife was pregnant, but he wanted to be with her instead. What came next was chilling. Beau told his mistress, "This is the last thing I want. I never felt more regretful of anything in my entire life, and part of me wants this pregnancy to not work out." Then, on October 30th, Beau laid out 3 options for himself. Option 1 was to say goodbye and move on completely. Option 2 was to tell Jennifer about the affair and ask for a divorce, then let her decide if she wanted to keep the child. If she did, he wrote, "I will have to give up a lot of my time and money supporting this kid while trying to start a life with you." Option 3 was to wait and see how the pregnancy goes. If there's a miscarriage or something, I'll leave her after that and be with you. When his mistress asked which option he preferred, Beau responded, "I guess 3 if I'm being selfish." Investigators realized Beau had systematically analyzed his options and chosen to wait. He was hoping that nature might solve his problem. Meanwhile, Beau continued playing the role of expectant father. He and Jennifer discussed decorating a nursery, purchased supplies for a pregnancy calendar, and researched health insurance plans. Behind Jennifer's back, Beau continued the relationship right up until her death. He told his mistress, "I'm addicted to you," and made plans to see her. The messages were damning, but investigators were about to find something even more disturbing. Following Beau's digital trail to his workplace, investigators obtained access to files from his computer. Among them was a handwritten document dated July 2019, months before Jennifer's disappearance. Beau had created a pros and cons list about leaving Jennifer for the other woman. Under benefits, he listed better sex life, more respect, more appreciative, a proven mother, and potentially nice fam. Following this, Beau wrote a question. He wrote, "Is the cost too high?" He framed his decision as a cost-benefit analysis. Under negatives, he listed, "Probably limit 1 kid, Jennifer and her family, have to move, half my assets/money, lost most if not all of my friends, trust is shaken/tainted, my family's disappointment, and take on mistress's kid with his problem." There was no mention of love or commitment. There were just financial assets, family reactions, and social consequences weighted against the new relationship. This was not just a document. It was a window into how Beau Rothwell's mind worked. His marriage was a problem to be solved through calculation. And now Jennifer was missing. Her blood was in the basement, and Beau was refusing to cooperate. But investigators were not done. What they discovered next would show that Beau had not simply snapped, he had been preparing. As investigators dug deeper into the hours before Jennifer's death, a pattern emerged. On November 11th, Beau messaged his mistress, telling her he had trouble sleeping because he had a lot on his mind. He told her, "It was just about our situation. Really, I was stressing more about the other side of that." They continued messaging throughout the day, then at 9:04 p.m., Beau sent his mistress a message. He wrote, "I'm not feeling well. I think it's the lunch I had earlier. I'm going to bed early. Sweet dreams, darling. I love you." But Beau did not go to bed. Surveillance footage showed him shopping shortly after that text. The receipt showed exactly what he purchased. He bought paper towels, bleach, and carpet cleaner. Later that evening, surveillance captured him returning. He had come back to purchase nitrile gloves. This was not a panicking husband scrambling after an unexpected tragedy. This was someone acquiring materials for a cleanup before anything had happened. But the most damning evidence was still to come. Location data from Beau's phone would show exactly what he did after Jennifer died. On the morning of November 12th, Beau's phone told a story of calculated movements. Data showed him traveling along the route Jennifer normally took to work. He had driven her Hyundai and abandoned it on the roadside. But his phone also showed travel in the opposite direction. It showed him traveling northwest toward rural Lincoln County, to remote areas far from their suburban home. Investigators realized Beau had been moving between locations with purpose. He had staged Jennifer's vehicle to look like she had disappeared on her commute. Then he had driven somewhere else. He had driven somewhere isolated. The question was no longer whether Beau was involved. The question was where he had taken Jennifer. On November 14, 2019, 5 hours after Beau's Facebook post, detectives arrested him. In interviews, Beau admitted to marital problems and acknowledged the affair, but he would not say what happened or where Jennifer was. Detectives laid everything out. They showed him the forensic evidence. They showed him the shopping trips. They showed him Jennifer's desperate searches. They showed him the affair. They showed him the 3 calculated options. They showed him the cost-benefit analysis. They showed him the location data. Every piece of the puzzle was there. The detectives made it clear that they knew what had happened. The only question was whether Beau would tell them where Jennifer was. For 4 days, Beau said nothing. But on November 18th, under the weight of overwhelming evidence, he finally broke. Beau Rothwell told investigators where they could find Jennifer's body. He led them about 45 miles northwest into Lincoln County near Hawk Point. They traveled down gravel roads until they reached a wooded area along Highway 61. There, in a shallow ravine about 20 feet from the road, search teams found human remains. The body was nude and partially covered with leaves and sticks. The head was wrapped in a plastic bag secured with tape. On November 19th, the medical examiner confirmed the remains were Jennifer Rothwell. The autopsy revealed the brutal reality. Jennifer had suffered multiple blunt force injuries to her head from being struck at least twice with a heavy object. The impacts were severe enough to fracture her skull. She was approximately 6 weeks pregnant. The fetus died with her. Her death was ruled a homicide caused by blunt force trauma. The charges against Beau were upgraded to first-degree murder, tampering with physical evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. But even with Jennifer's body recovered, critical questions remained. What exactly had happened on the night of November 11th? Had Beau planned to kill his wife, or had he simply lost control? Those questions would not be answered for more than 2 years, and when they were, the answers would come from Beau himself from the witness stand. In April 2022, after more than 2 years of delays, Beau Rothwell went on trial in St. Louis County Circuit Court. He faced 3 charges. He was charged with first-degree murder, tampering with physical evidence, and abandonment of a corpse. The central legal question was stark. Had Beau deliberately and planned the killing? Or had he simply snapped in the heat of an argument? The answer would determine whether he would spend the rest of his life in prison or whether he might someday walk free. Beau's defense strategy was clear. He would admit to killing Jennifer, but he would argue it was not premeditated. It was a crime of passion, not calculation. To make that case, Beau would have to take the stand. In a move that surprised many, Beau Rothwell testified in his own defense. For the first time publicly, he described what happened on the night of November 11, 2019. His story contradicted everything he had told police initially. On that Monday night, he testified he'd decided to tell Jennifer about the affair. He said he never really believed in divorce, but felt compelled to come clean and throw himself at her mercy. When he confessed, Jennifer's reaction was explosive. An argument erupted. She demanded answers. She asked who this woman was. She asked how long it had been going on. She asked if he ever intended to end it. Beau refused to give details. Then, according to his testimony, Jennifer said something that shocked him. She claimed she might also be seeing someone. She said she was not sure the baby was his. Prosecutors would later point out it was completely unsupported by evidence. A paternity test performed after the murder proved definitively that Beau was the father. But on the stand, Beau insisted that that was the moment everything changed. He stood up from the kitchen table. He saw a rubber mallet he'd used to hang decorations. He grabbed it, walked behind Jennifer while she remained seated, and struck her in the right temple with enough force to draw blood. Jennifer stumbled up, trying to run. She headed towards the garage door, attempting to escape, but Beau chased her. They struggled at the top of the basement stairs, and he struck her again. This time, he fractured her skull. Jennifer fell down the stairs, unconscious, and unresponsive. Beau described the attack as happening in a red haze of rage. He claimed that he did not think through what he was doing. He said it was pure emotion, pure impulse. It was a compelling story. It was the story of a man pushed to his breaking point who lost control. But prosecutors were ready, and they had evidence that told a very different story. Prosecutors systematically dismantled Beau's claim of a spontaneous red haze. They presented the evidence investigators had uncovered: the shopping trips for bleach and gloves hours before the murder, Jennifer's fearful internet searches, the affair he'd maintained while she struggled to conceive, the 3 options he had calculated, the cost-benefit analysis where he had asked himself, is the cost too high? This was not a man who suddenly snapped. This was a man who had been weighing his options for months. Then, prosecutors walked the jury through what happened after Jennifer died. Beau did not call for help. He did not attempt CPR. Instead, he executed a methodical cover-up. He cleaned the crime scene with the supplies he had pre-purchased. He drove Jennifer's body to a remote location and disposed of it. He staged her car to look like it had disappeared on her commute. He used her phone to create a fake digital trail. He went to work as normal. He sent loving messages to his mistress, and he joined search parties while knowing exactly where Jennifer's body lay. Prosecutors argued that the pregnancy had trapped Beau into a future he had been trying to escape. He did not want the financial hit of divorce. He did not want the family disappointment. And when he confessed the affair on November 11th with no easy way out, he made a choice. He had already bought the cleaning supplies, and when the moment came, he eliminated the problem. After hearing all the evidence and the testimony, the jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When they returned to the courtroom, their decision was clear. They found Beau Rothwell guilty of first-degree murder. They also convicted him of tampering with physical evidence and abandonment of a corpse. The jury had rejected the defense's argument entirely. The evidence showed a man who had thought about what he was doing, who had made choices. And those choices had cost Jennifer her life. For Jennifer's family, who sat through weeks of testimony, the verdict brought a measure of justice. Jennifer would have been 29, just 9 days after she was killed on November 20th, 2019. In July 2022, Beau Rothwell returned to court for sentencing. Under Missouri law, a conviction of first-degree murder carries a mandatory sentence of life in prison without parole. The judge imposed that sentence along with 4 years for each of the remaining charges. One term would run consecutive, the other concurrent. Beau Rothwell, now 31 years old, would spend the rest of his life in the Missouri Department of Corrections. He would never be eligible for parole.